Welcome to the Descenso Zone podcast, where we talk about creativity and personal growth through a lens of curiosity and humor. My guest today has dedicated herself to researching and uncovering the secrets of living a long, healthy life. She spent the last 11 years in Okinawa, Japan, where an astonishing number of people live past the age of 100, under the tutelage of renowned longevity researcher Dr. Makoto Suzuki. Now in his mid-90s and still conducting research, they've spent years uncovering what may be the single biggest predictor of a long life. And surprisingly, it's not diet or exercise. Now, let's get into the zone with Christal Burnette. Christal Burnette, thanks for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah, me too.
You have so much to share and such a fascinating story. I'm excited to unpack what you've learned after spending over 11 years in Japan to learn about longevity. And they are famous, specifically in Okinawa, for having people live an unusually long time. So that's like the perfect place to study longevity. But first, maybe let's get into like a broad overview of who you are for our listeners and what your qualifications are and why they should listen to this conversation.
Sure. So to start, I am from South Florida, and I moved to Japan when I was in undergrad. So I went to University of Florida, and I got my bachelor's, and I moved to Tokyo at first, not Okinawa, to study abroad. And then after that, I went from Tokyo to Okinawa to get my master's degree. So I actually sought out to figure out what's going on in Okinawa and to figure out, who is studying the longevity and what I can learn from it. So I went to get my master's degree at it's a university called the University of the Ryukyus. And I studied plants because I thought that was the key to longevity, as most people think it's food. And then when I was there, I found Dr. Makoto Suzuki. He's the man who discovered longevity in the 1970s. And he has a center called the Okinawa Research Center for Longevity Science. It's a very long name. And I've been a part of that center for, I don't even know how long it's been, maybe like 4 years now or so. And I've been just kind of working under Dr. Suzuki, although keep in mind he's 93 years old this year. Yeah, so I'm working with a 93-year-old Japanese cardiologist who has all the files in his office. He has thousands of centenarians. He has their EKGs, fecal matter tests, pictures, interviews, family trees. So we have all that data up there, plus his published papers. So that is, I'd like to say, one of the reasons someone could listen to me about Okinawan longevity.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So when you say Dr. Suzuki discovered longevity, can you unpack that for me? Like, what do you mean by discovering longevity?
It sounds weird, I know. But what happened is that so keep in mind the Okinawans don't know why they live so long. So that's kind of the hard part. That's the hard part of interviewing an elderly Okinawan person, because you can't just say, "Why do you live so long?" And they'll give you crazy answers, because sometimes I'll ask that for fun, and they'll say, "It's because I eat natto, the stinky fermented beans," or they'll say, "Oh, it's because I walk every day." So Dr. Suzuki, what happened in the 1970s is Dr. Suzuki, he's actually from Tokyo. He moved to Okinawa to help build the first big hospital, because the island at that point had never had a big proper hospital before. And while he was there working as a cardiologist, he heard a rumor. And the rumor is that there is a 100-year-old living in a village up north. And he didn't believe it at first. He was very skeptical. So he took a nurse. They got on a bus. They went to the village. It's called Yomitan Village. And they got off and they started looking for this 100-year-old. And so the story is he saw a woman working in the field, and she looked like to be about her 70s or 80s. So he went up to her and he said, "I'm looking for the Kame family." And she's like, "Oh, that's my family. I'll show you to my house." And he's like, "Oh, wonderful." So they're walking to the house, and he's like, "I think I'm looking for your mother because I'm looking for a 100-year-old." And she goes, and he says the name of the woman. And she goes, "No, that's me." And he was shocked because he's working in the field with a scythe cutting grass. And he's like, "There's no way it's you." So he checked her body. He did interviews. He went back and multiple times to check to make sure she's actually 100 years old. And she was. So that started the study of how Dr. Suzuki made it his life's work. So it wasn't just her, and then it was the neighbor, and then it was this neighbor, and then it was the town over, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew.
Was that a culture shock for you? Like, were you surprised to see people so old just still being active and living normal lives?
Yeah, yeah, because my grandparents did not live that long. Um, if they didn't pass away in their 50s or 60s, family members, if they didn't pass away in 50s or 60s from a sickness, then my grandparents lived to like maybe their 80s. So that was definitely a shock. But a bigger culture shock was actually when I went there, since this is a big deal, right? People are living healthy, long, healthy, happy lives. And it's people know the word blue zone. That's what it's been trademarked. They know the word blue zone. So this is this famous concept, so famous that the island is literally called the Island of Longevity. So when I came here to get my master's degree and then work under Dr. Suzuki, I was expecting there to be like a huge team, journalists, YouTubers, Instagrammers, like I was expecting a big buzz about it in both the English speaking community and Japanese people, Okinawan people. When I came here, there's no one. There's no, and that includes Okinawans and Japanese people. Like there is no, you can even Google it today. Besides me, there's really no like blue zone specialist, Okinawan longevity expert, except for me and Dr. Suzuki.
Wow, that's crazy. Can you explain what a blue zone is?
Yeah, so blue zone is an area where a large percentage of the population is living with low rates of disease past the age of 90.
So there's only a few of these zones in the world, Okinawa being one of them. Do you know what some of the others are? My guess would be somewhere in Europe would have one.
Yeah, so there's five blue zones, Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Icaria, Greece, and Nicoya, Costa Rica, and Loma Linda, California. But
Really?
since I've been in the world, so see, yeah, everyone says really, California. But since I've been in this industry so long and talked to so many people, the ones that I can say are truly a blue zone according to researchers, is Okinawa and Italy because they have the hard data and they actually pass the requirements to be a blue zone. Greece is a iffy third, and then I just don't talk about the others.
Fair enough. So what is it about these places? There's something in the water. Is there something in the food? Is there something about the mindset? Like what is it about these places that make them true blue zones?
I thought it was food. Most people think it's food. People come every week to Okinawa to experience the Okinawan lifestyle and talk to Dr. Suzuki, and everyone comes in thinking it's food, first of all. Like, number one, we need to focus on food. If it was food, we would have figured out the secret already. People would take food more seriously if that really was the answer, but clearly, clearly we're not doing that. Um, and then they look at exercise. So food, exercise. Okay, we know that's important, but is it? And then we look at low stress lifestyle, social connections, having good community around you. Um, so everyone looks at those first. Dr. Suzuki has looked at thousands of centenarians in Okinawa, and not only that, he's paired with other researchers in Europe, like Giovanni Pez is a very close friend of his. Michel Poulain is also, those are the two top researchers in Europe that focus on Italy and Greece. Dr. Suzuki has looked at all of these people, and he has seen that there's nothing in common among all of them when it comes to food or exercise or how many stairs are around their house or if they live near the ocean or not. All these centenarians have too many varying factors for him to say like, oh yes, it is eating a yellow sweet potato and fish. He can't say that. What he has seen now at the age of 93, he says the only thing they all have in common is having a strong ikigai, something called an ikigai. And an ikigai is really hard to define. I've been trying to get a definition, but working with a 93-year-old Japanese cardiologist, it's very difficult because he's very particular about the nuances because it is a Japanese word. But essentially, ikigai means how you value life, how you experience it, and find value in the things that you do. So all of these centenarians and the people living in the blue zone, they all enjoy life. They all go out, do very simple things, and look forward to it and make it their schedule. So he says that ikigai is something that we need to take much more seriously.
I'm really interested in this topic of ikigai, but I want to just step back really quickly because you said something that's a little bit contentious maybe when people first hear it, that food is not the thing, exercise is not the thing. When you say that, do you acknowledge that it plays a role, or are you saying that like it doesn't even play a role? Like I feel like if you're just eating McDonald's every day, you're not going to live as a healthy long life as compared to the guy in Greece who's eating chicken and olive oil and that kind of stuff. So you're not saying that there's no impact of food and exercise. You're saying that the key factor is this thing that Dr. Suzuki talks about, this ikigai. Is that right?
Yeah, sorry. So because people get honed in on food so much, I try to like throw it to the side. The elderly centenarians, what they do eat unprocessed food, but they just eat different ingredients. So people come thinking that the Okinawans eat purple sweet potato and then they have some pork and then they have vegetables, and that's true. But they all some of them eat beef, some of them drink alcohol, some of them occasionally have a pizza. But the thing is they make everything at home. So everything is unprocessed, but there's no set diet. I mean, I can suggest a healthy diet if you're already coming in with unhealthy symptoms. So yeah, food and exercise does play key, but it's not that's not the thing that Dr. Suzuki wants you to take home and spend all your energy on.
Right. So this idea of like food and exercise plays a role and is a factor in eating healthy, unprocessed food is important, but it's not the key thing that Dr. Suzuki is interested in, and that's this ikigai. So this ikigai sounds like, and I know that there's probably some terminology around this, but like it sounds to me like a sense of purpose, a sense of importance, a sense of a reason to wake up in the morning. Am I getting the right idea for that?
So that's the information that's online. The reason, so a lot of people define ikigai as the reason you wake up in the morning or your life's purpose. And sometimes for the sake of just getting the concept across, I will use that. But when I took those definitions to Dr. Suzuki and also both Okinawan people and Japanese people, elderly people, I asked them what they thought of that, and they all said it didn't sound right.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so the definitions are are close but not quite right. So Dr. Suzuki says the best definition is the closest definition is carpe diem. You know that
Right.
Latin phrase, carpe?
Yes. Seize the day.
Yeah, seize the day. So like find it says find joy in the present moment. So it's essentially finding joy in the present moment, which means you're finding something that gives your life a little bit of value, and therefore you feel joy.
And that doesn't necessarily, you're saying, have to be a grandiose purpose. That can be going for a walk. That can be enjoying the company of someone that you're close to. That can be enjoying a nice meal. So you're saying it's more about enjoying life, enjoying the present, living in this present moment instead of doing what a lot of us Westerners do, which is living in the future or living in the past, being anxious about what's going to happen in the future or worried about that, or looking back at the past and cringing, oh, I should have said this, I should have done that. And this ikigai's sort of central theme, it seems to be, is like forget all that, live in the moment, enjoy the present moment that you're experiencing right now. Is that am I closer?
Yeah, so I'll explain. There's two types of ikigai, but this one type we're talking about right now, which I call little ikigai, that is finding the little happinesses in the moment. And you can use the word mindfulness. So we have the word mindfulness now. There's scientific research behind it about how it helps people's mental health. And one of the examples of this mindfulness working so well with the Okinawans in particular is that of all these areas where people live a long time, Okinawa is the only one that got completely destroyed in World War II. So these long-living people experience the saddest, most tragic stories you'll ever hear. Like sometimes I talk to them about it and it's just, I can't even repeat them. They're so sad. And yet, despite this, they say to me every single time, Christal, I never think about the war unless you ask me about it. And Dr. Suzuki found in his research that they have extremely low rates of PTSD. So the Okinawans have been through World War II tragedies and yet have low rates of PTSD and are very good at living in the moment. Now, I can't answer why they developed this mindset, but it's just the way they are. And then we can define this as something called little ikigai. So having little joys throughout the day and living in the present moment.
Wow, that's so interesting. So it's like, it's not that they've forgotten. It's not that they've sort of, because if something traumatic happens, you can sort of compartmentalize that in a way and then like hide it away. But you're saying that they still actively remember it if you ask them, but they've sort of moved past that mentally and are in this current moment and they're just living life in the current moment as opposed to living in that trauma of the past. Is that the idea?
Yep, exactly.
Wow. That's really powerful. And like if we could bottle that, that ability and that skill to do that, I think it would help a lot of people. It's really an interesting concept, especially when you think about, these people who suffered through a tragic war like that. I mean, I can't really imagine a worse thing to go through and to come out of it on the other side and still experience longevity and happiness and this ikigai. I mean, it's really something quite interesting. I'm glad you're studying it because I want to know more.
I want to know even more too, because like so of this concept of little ikigai, they have mindfulness, but after coming out of the war, they've also have a great sense of appreciation, gratitude. So like they're some of the most grateful, kind, giving people. And that's one part I guess you could assume from someone experienced something so traumatic as World War II. But this envelops the concept of little ikigai. So we have mindfulness, we have gratitude, we just have like, enjoying the little things, not chasing after money. So we have this current Venn diagram on the internet, which is what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and how you can make money. So I also brought this Venn diagram to the Japanese people and the Okinawan people and my teacher. And I said, okay, well, this is the diagram that's online. What do you think about it? And they were all like, this doesn't look quite right. So the two parts that they don't agree with is what the world needs and how to make money. So when it comes to an ikigai, you can say, okay, something you're good at and something you love, your passions. Those two things you can connect to how you enjoy life, right? Because it's your life. But what the world needs, a lot of the Okinawans don't go out in the morning and say, okay, I got to do what the world needs. They do what their partner needs. They do what their neighbor needs. They do what their cat needs. They're not going out trying to impress a million people, right? They also don't have smartphones, so they're not on social media trying to impress everyone who's looking at their video. So it's not what they're not doing something for the world. And then two, they definitely agree that has nothing to do with money. A byproduct, you can make money as a byproduct by chance, but that's not their main goal. So if you ask them, like, well, how can I make money doing my passion? They'll say, do your passion first, and the money will come naturally later. So after talking to all these Japanese people and Okinawan people, I found that they don't have some just little ikigai, enjoying the little joys throughout the day. Some of them, but not all of them, some of them have something called a big ikigai. So this is what I would say is closer to the Venn diagram we have online, and that's that big goal that you're going after. So some Okinawans do have a big goal. Like I have one woman who's 94 years old. She runs a bar by herself. She happens to make money with her passion. She loves people coming into her bar and talking to them all night. She also has like a goal of going on a cruise someday, which for a 94-year-old is a pretty big goal, I think. When she told me that, I was shocked. I've met other Okinawans who say that they want to make a library for PTSD children. This woman that told me that to make the library, she's 98. When I asked her that, she's almost 100 now. So, it's not that you can't have a big goal, like you feel like you have a big purpose for your life. It's just that not everyone needs to have that. So that's why I separated the groups of little ikigai. So all of them have little ikigai. You have to enjoy the little things throughout the day. You can't go without that. But some of them have big ikigai. Now you don't have to have a big goal, but some of them do. So it just depends on how you want to live your life. But either way, they have ikigai.
I happen to follow this one guy who like goes to restaurants in Japan, and you always see this like really cute old couple who are like way too old to be, working in a restaurant, and they're so happy. And all the comments are like, "Oh, these poor people, like they can't retire, like because they're thinking in like a Western way, but really it's like the vibe of them is like they love to feed people and chat with people and cook. It's like, I'm not sure what the economic situation is like in Japan, but like it seems like they're doing it for the joy of doing it, as opposed to like someone who's forced to like work some menial job into their 80s here because like they can't afford a mortgage or whatever. So it just feels different. And maybe there's some like Instagram sheen on that like I'm not privy to the realities, but at least that's the sense that I get from it. Do you think that is that accurate, or is that just some social media nonsense?
No, no, it's right. It's right. So Japanese people, as well as Okinawan people, the elderly people. So we're talking about the older generation, not the younger generation, because younger generation is more westernized. But the elderly people, they enjoy it. They genuinely want to have their restaurant because one, retiring is not recommended for longevity. Never retire. You can change jobs, but don't retire. Uh, and then when you're an elderly person, find an ikigai that can keep you going. So, like for example, that couple, the restaurant, that's definitely their ikigai. And I've interviewed people in the same situation as them, and I say, like, do you want to stop doing this? Do you want to retire? And they always say, like, no, like what else am I gonna do? Like I like doing this, but also like if I don't do this, I'm just gonna sit at home all day. And then what happens when you sit at home all day? Your body starts to deteriorate and you don't want to exercise and get out of the house anymore. And then maybe you stop eating at all or don't eat healthy anymore. And then you stop seeing your friends. And so you see it's connected. So Dr. Suzuki says Ikigai is like the center of the longevity web. So we have food is connected to Ikigai, exercise is connected, low stress lifestyle is connected, happiness everything is connected to Ikigai. And a good example of this is I don't know about your grandparents, but like for me, I've seen it myself, is when my grandmother couldn't take care of my grandpa anymore and they put him into a nursing home, he died shortly after. So that's seeing a loss of ikigai. When you take a grandparent and put them in a nursing home and you're like, okay, bye, like this is your new life now. So they're away from the home they lived in for so long. They're away from their neighborhood, their family, their friends. They can't do the things that they enjoyed because now they're in this different environment. So you're taking them away from their ikigai, putting them in a different environment, and then majority of them deteriorate very quickly. So it's like a real life example of seeing what is life like without ikigai. Can I live without it? When you're younger, you can try, but then we'll see higher rates of depression. So we see younger people we have I've read that we have some of the highest rates of depression we've ever had among the younger generation. And it's not having your ikigai lined to right, which is another way of saying like you're on social media comparing yourself. You're feeling like you don't have enough. You feel like you're not doing enough. You're not good enough. And this is taking away from the ikigai. Because I've also asked the elderly Okinawans, what do you think of do you ever compare yourself to your neighbors? Do you ever feel like you didn't do enough? Do you ever feel like you want more money? And they all say, nope, nope, nope. I am very happy where I am. This is how life is supposed to be. And they never compare themselves.
Wow, so it's like a sense of gratitude. It's a sense of like, richness is not about what you have, but the things you don't want, or whatever the phrase is. I probably butchered that, but the idea that being that like wanting less is the thing that makes you rich, as opposed to like being, having all these wealthy possessions. And what you said about your grandparents really resonated with me as well, because, my grandfather had a garden. He loved to garden. And when he could no longer do that, that really, crushed his ikigai, I think, in a way. And so, Yeah, I've heard plenty of stories of people going into, nursing homes or hospitals and the like and declining very quickly because, what do you do all day? Like, what do you think about besides your mortality? And like, it's having that thing to do is really, I agree, is an important thing. And even if it's a small thing, it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be a world altering big ikigai, right? It can just be something that you brings you joy or passion that doesn't even necessarily isn't even necessarily something the world needs or wants or will pay for. Right. I mean, if you're just a guy who likes to do pottery or something and nobody buys them, but you enjoy it, then like that's your thing and that's okay. And that's what gives you a sense of joy and meaning and purpose. And I think you're right. The Western world has sort of forgotten a lot of that.
Yeah, exactly. And the issue that I'm trying to figure out right now is that so since Dr. Suzuki is 93 years old, his one regret, his biggest regret since starting the Okinawan centenarian study in the 1970s is that he didn't study Ikigai more. Because in the 1970s, most countries weren't taking mental health seriously, and especially Japan. So he does have notes of Ikigai from the 70s, but they weren't put in the forefront. And he didn't want to show it to other scientists because he felt maybe embarrassed because it's, not something you can put into a test tube. So his biggest regret is not studying Ikigai even more, which is why he's focusing on it right now and has asked me to continue it and try to grow it and try to get Ikigai to be taken more seriously. So one of the things I found is, studying it is great, but everyone keeps asking me how to find theirs. So I started the journey of the very difficult journey of trying to help people figure out what their Ikigai is, because trying to help a non-Japanese person figure out their Ikigai is very difficult. Um, which is actually, I could say Japanese people too. The younger generation are just, a lot of people are having difficulty figuring out their ikigai. So I've started doing workshops and one-on-one sessions and working with people and figuring out, since I have the pillars of what a little and big ikigai are, how can I help a person figure them out? So, like I said earlier, the Venn diagram, everyone agrees with use your passions and use what you're good at to figure out your ikigai, for example. It's that most people actually can't answer those questions. Like I'll say, like I used to start off with like, okay, write down your passions and write what you're good at, and people would stare at the wall. So I was like, wait a second, okay, this might be more difficult than I thought it was. So I had to develop like I made a game, I made a card game, I made different kind of worksheets, like I changed the flow because people don't know who they are. Like it's not just knowing your ikigai, like people don't know who they actually are as a person. They don't know what they really love. They don't know what they're actually really good at. And then my pillars are actually it's not what the world needs and it's not how to make money. It's actually what your values are and who you're doing it for. So it's your passions, strengths, values, and who. And then if you can figure out what your values in life are, and then who you're actually doing everything for, because it's definitely for someone, then you can figure out your ikigai. But I found that it's actually much more difficult for a person to think of each of these things to figure out their ikigai. And then when it comes to living in the present moment, some people are really good at it. Like I'll tell them write a bunch of little ikigai right now in 5 minutes. I do a test. And some people can write a bunch. They're like, yeah, looking at butterflies, drinking coffee in the morning, seeing my daughter, crocheting, and some can just bam, 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 like write them all down. Some people can only write three. I'll give them a good 5 minutes and they'll write three down and then stare at the wall the rest of the time. So I'm seeing difficulty for the younger generation. And when I say younger, I say it like younger than 50s, having difficulty writing little joys and then writing about themselves. It's fascinating.
Yeah, interesting, but somehow not surprising. At least you have found your own ikigai, which seems to be helping other people find theirs, which is a really, really cool full
Yeah.
circle moment for you.
Yeah.
I,
I
I
love
am curious about the generational gap, though. Like, why do you think that there is such a stark difference there? I mean, you mentioned the social media and the phones, and I understand that a lot of the older generation aren't on their phones as chronically as we are, and even younger. Do you think that the phone has become like a pseudo community replacement for a lot of young people. And so, the older generation are actually talking to real humans in real life and have a more grounded sense of community, whereas some of the younger generation are just chronically online and comparing and seeing the Instagram person who has a Ferrari and who has this vacation and this and that. And so you sort of get into this negative mindset of like, well, I'm not enough. I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that. Do you think that social media is a big influence on why there's such a generational gap? And what else could it be as well, if you have any other ideas?
100%. I know that is the one of the biggest reasons that we have this gap. But actually, when I interviewed the elderly Okinawans, and they told me, and this was by chance, they brought this out in one of their answers because I wasn't saying, why is the younger generation not doing this? They know the old elder generation knows it's because we have too much. That's what they say. He says the younger generation has access to too much, and it's so much that they're not grateful for it. So, like one example I got, I was out in the ocean and I found this seaweed farm. And by chance, the farmer came down and I interviewed him, talked to him a little bit, and he said, um, and again, he's farming at the age of like 85, which is amazing, seaweed farming. And I say, what do you think is wrong with this what's the difference with the younger generation? And he said when he was younger, him and his siblings would be given one banana and they would split the one banana among his siblings. And so through that, he said that he became close with his siblings. They sometimes would fight, but they learned to share, and they had one banana, so they were very grateful for the taste of the banana. And then he compared to his own grandchildren, and he said, "Now my grandkids, they don't even get a banana; they get a bunch of candy thrown at them, and they don't even care about that. They don't feel that same gratitude that he felt when he had one banana among his like eight siblings." So, and again, like another elderly person said, this younger generation just has access to too much stuff. So, and with that answer, I mean, what can you do with it? Like, we're not going to take stuff away from people, but it's essentially they're telling us like the younger generation they're not having a natural environment to teach them gratitude. Because back then, you'd learn gratitude naturally no matter what. But now we have to make, I don't know, an artificial environment to teach people gratitude.
So we're sort of inundated with excess these days in a way that makes us feel less gratitude because, if you only have one banana, you're going to be very grateful for every bite of that banana. But if, you have a cupboard full of Doritos, it might not hit you the same way, right? And you can just go to the store and get more and so on. So it's really comes down to, it sounds like a sense of gratitude. But yeah, it's really hard to peel some of those layers back, especially once you've got used to them. I mean, we take for granted even like, 120 years ago, maybe you couldn't even get a hot shower, right? And so you really take things for granted once you have them. So I can totally see that shift being part of the reason why young people are struggling with their ikigai so much. It reminds me of a stoic idea. There's a stoic figure named Seneca who was very rich. And what he would do is he would sort of intentionally live like a poor person so that he would, I'm maybe going to get this wrong, but I think the idea was he would intentionally like eat bad food or like sleep on the floor. And like he would do this to like prove to himself that like even if he lost everything, it wouldn't be that bad. Like he could handle it. And it's kind of this idea of like going back to the basics of like, okay, like experiencing gratitude for, you do have a bed and you do have a roof over your head and you have some food. And just like experiencing that gratitude, I think is something that we take for granted.
Yeah.
This dichotomy between like the older generation, the younger generation, so interesting because it's even relevant in Japan, which I find like
Mhm.
in Okinawa specifically, are we seeing younger, like earlier deaths, I guess, in the younger generation, or is that a trend that's happening? Like, is it becoming less of a blue zone?
Yes, unfortunately, Okinawa has turned into it's kind of like following. I'm American, so I'm going to use America as the scapegoat, but it's turning into America. The obesity rate is increasing. People are eating unhealthy food. They're not walking as much, et cetera, et cetera. Um, One of the reasons is because, so what I can say is back then, when I say back then, like decades ago, pre-war, pre-World War II, maybe, uh, poverty equaled longevity. So if you look at all the blue zones, actually, Italy, Greece, Costa Rica, they're all impoverished areas. And so was Okinawa. So that when you were impoverished back then, it meant you had to grow your own food. You had to interact with your neighbors. You had to keep trying hard to survive. You had to exercise every day. Now, poverty means McDonald's having a slow, maybe broken, but still working car, struggling to get clothes, and then maybe having a higher divorce rate, and then having difficulty with your children, and not being able to financially survive, et cetera, et cetera. So Okinawa is the most impoverished prefecture in all of Japan right now, actually. And then Italy is still impoverished area as well as Greece. But with Okinawa, it's part of a first world country now. Japan is a first world country. So now it's lagging behind. So now we're seeing that difference in what poverty does to that.
How you define poverty across generations is so different, and the effect that that has. Like the idea that if you're a poor person, 80, 90 years ago in Okinawa, it's like you're growing your own food, you're kind of doing things that sort of rich people do nowadays. If you have your own, garden, you're growing hydroponic plants in your basement or whatever the thing is, it's like you're kind of doing that stuff. Whereas, yeah, I could understand if you're on the lower economic scale in a Western society, it's like, well, you don't have time to think about your ikigai. Like you have to, go to work and like find a job and put food on the table and pay the mortgage or the rent or whatever. So it's like maybe do you think that that has any impact on why young people are struggling with their ikigai? It's like you need survival basic ability before you can like, find joy in life, I would think.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's right. And also to add on to that, so a lot of people think Okinawa is uh, it's losing its blue zone badge because of they keep saying the West, the West, the West. America, it's America. Because Okinawa is covered, a third of it is covered in American military bases. But actually, I found that it's not just the Western influence, it's also the mainland Japan influence. So when you're researching Okinawan longevity, um, people make the mistake of grouping Okinawa with Japan, but actually Okinawa used to be its own kingdom. It used to have its own king and queen, and it used to trade with China, Japan, and other countries. Yeah, so it was its own people, had its own language. Okinawans looked distinctively different from Japanese people. They had their own thing going on, and then Japan took Okinawa, took it over. Satsuma clan in the late 1800s, and then America took it, World War II, and then Japan took it back. So we're seeing Okinawa be thrown between countries. And Japan, mainland Japan, brought in its culture. And mainland Japan, I don't know if you know, but they're famous for having extremely hard work environments. So we see a high suicide rate in mainland Japan. And we see people being overworked, or they have a word for being overworked to death. So they brought in that overworking environment in Okinawa as well. So now we have people in Okinawa, they move to live in a little tiny box apartment by themselves so they can live near the company. And then the company has them work from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. And then they have them go out drinking afterward because that's Japanese culture. So we're seeing it's not just Western influence, but then we have the tough mainland culture because Okinawa, its true tradition is being very slow island life, very relaxed, like take a long time to answer your email. We're going to do things very slow here. But that was a low stress lifestyle. So we're seeing not just the Western influence. I just want to point that out that it's also, Okinawa is just turning into Japan when it actually used to be Okinawa. It used to be by itself. So that's also something you need to consider when you're researching Okinawa longevity is when were they born and who is influencing their lifestyle? Because throughout the decades, it's changed, from country to country.
So stress is also one of those factors. It's so that you have the ikigai sort of in the inner circle, and then you have exercise, stress, community. You said a couple other things, but so it's sort of the central idea around this, and then we're experiencing a shift, a cultural shift away, sort of what feels like the wrong direction, away from longevity towards these other things because of the lifestyle, because of the new sort of work hustle culture. That's not just in Japan. It's I definitely feel it here in Canada, and I'm sure it's like that in the States as well. So how do we get away from that, Christal? How do we get back to sort of the low stress kind of like lifestyle that will, promote longevity?
You can do it. So that's the hard part is it's really easy, but it's hard at the same time. So everything is a choice. So in Okinawa, me living in Okinawa, it's not that it's impossible to live an Okinawan longevity lifestyle. It's actually quite easy here. Vegetables and fruit are very cheap. You can live in a small, not the most beautiful apartment, but you can live in a small place in the countryside here for very cheap. You can find a job. Healthcare is very good here. So it is a choice that you can make these decisions to live a low stress longevity lifestyle. But you have to actively choose to not be pressured by. So here in Okinawa, parents pressure their kids to be government workers because government workers have the most stable incomes and they don't get overworked because the laws, the country laws, they have to go home at 5 p.m. But you gotta not listen to that. So like I did that actually. My parents told me you need to be a doctor, and I was like, okay. So I went. I was a pre-med student in university at first to do the medical field, but then I changed it. I was like, I don't like this. I'm going to study Japanese. I studied some Chinese. I studied languages, and I was like, I'm going to Japan. And my parents were mad. They were mad, mad. And they were like, we're not supporting you financially if you want to do this crazy thing, Christal. And I was like, okay. And I went off and I did it because I followed my ikigai. Like you have to get away and make the true decision to choose what you actually love. But you have to know what you love, and that's the thing is people don't know what their passions are, or they don't know what they're good at, and they don't, so therefore they don't know how to utilize that in a job, or they don't know what their values are, so they choose a job that goes against their values, and then they're stressed and cannot work well with others and are not happy, right? So everything again, I'm bringing it back to ikigai, but again, it's if you could follow your ikigai, naturally you will be able to live this lifestyle, but you got to actually follow it. And that's the hardest part with my students is I tell them you got to follow it and they don't.
In a way, I totally agree with it. Logistically, I don't know if I can agree with it though. It's like I would love to just be the guy who loves to just make pottery for fun and not worry about money, but I got to pay for the bills. So it's like, in a way, how do you help someone find their ikigai if they're in that position where they have to keep a job, right, to like just sustain basic human life, but they want it, they don't know what their ikigai is, they don't know what they're good at or what their passions are. You mentioned you have some worksheets, some games to help them find that. What kind of things are you suggesting to those people who are still in search of their ikigai?
It's deciding what you really need in life. So when I help people find their ikigai, but I cannot force them to change their lifestyle, right? Like it really stops there. If they really want help changing their lifestyle, I can recommend it to them because I've done it so many times myself. But it's this attachment. It goes a little bit into like the Buddhism concepts of like don't be attached to things, but it's do you really need that fancy car? And do you really need this extremely expensive house that's keeping you in debt? Do you really need to do this job when, in the city over, we can find the pottery job you love where you can actually make a living? Like, are you willing to change your life around in order to follow your ikigai? And a lot of people aren't, or a lot of people think that, their life will be over if they change everything. But like you said with Seneca, like he purposely did things that were unpleasant, and he realized if I lost everything, I'd be okay. So I've also been through the same situation where I was in poverty here in Okinawa because, like I said, my parents were not going to help me financially live in Japan. Um, and I was a student and I was a graduate student as well. And then I started my own company because I didn't want to work for a heart, the companies that work you to death. And I lived under the equivalent of 1,000 USD every month here in Okinawa. So I was like scraping by, but I was like, this, I know this is right. Like starting my own company, doing a job I love, I know this is right. So for this next, and it was about 8 years, I was like, I need to live this very scrape by lifestyle in order to achieve my goal. Now, this is maybe just my personality, but I was very set on it, following my ikigai. But it was tough. Like, I'm not saying, things are going to be easy, but if you look at the end goal, like things will be better in the end.
I have a friend who was nice enough to come on the podcast, Zach Bosniak, who has started his own gym. And he is very clearly, this is his ikigai. And he's, you know, lived in his basement, rented out the top floor. Like he's done that scrape by lifestyle. And not everyone is willing to give up the luxuries and just sort of not not live in a world of comfort. Like once you've experienced the comfort, it's really hard to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna move to a smaller place, or I'm gonna move further away so my commute is longer, or I'm gonna, take a risk and start my own business. And so, I really commend him for having the courage to do that, and I commend you as well because it's something that takes a lot of courage. Where does that come from? Like, is it the ikigai that you're just like, is it just an internal feeling? Like, how did you come to the conclusion that you were just going to move to Japan, drop everything? And was there a moment when you realized like, hey, I don't think I'm coming back?
Oh, I knew I wasn't coming back when I moved here. I just, with that part with Japan, I just knew. And then when I came here, it solidified it. Um, but it sounds cheesy, but like I just listened to my heart. It wasn't because of anime and manga. That's what most people come here for. But it was because I generally loved the language and I thought the culture was beautiful. And when I came here, it showed me like, yes, it is actually gorgeous. And the way the society run is very clean and people are very kind. And I just, it fit my personality with the way that things are done in Japan. I really liked it. But where that drive comes from, some people are born with the drive, and then other people just need to ask for help. So like that's why I do the ikigai work is because some people just need help and they come to me. I have, for example, the group I work the most with is the wives of the military members that are stationed here. Um, and a lot of them come to me saying, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I want to find my life's purpose. Like I don't understand what I'm doing here. And some come to me for help and some don't. And you'll see the difference of the people that don't ask for help. So, I mean, pretty much what I'm saying is like you can do it. Just figure out your resources that are around you.
So, if you could give some advice to someone who is looking for their ikigai, is it just try a bunch of stuff and see what you like? Is it, look within yourself and, remember, like a lot of times it's like what you liked as a kid, maybe that you sort of got pushed away, as the encumbrances of being an adult fall upon you, you sort of forget that you liked chess or whatever the thing was. What would you recommend? Is it trying a bunch of stuff? Is it looking back into your past? Is it, what would you recommend to someone who just like has no clue where to start?
So the card game actually does what you just said. So the card game will ask a series of questions so you could look into your past or look into how your brain works. So one of the hundreds of cards I have is what did you do as a kid that you don't do anymore? And I had a woman answer once. She said, I used to opera sing. And I was like, what? You used to opera sing? Like, that's not just regular singing. And she's like, yeah, I used to love it. But then I had kids. And then we started moving around the world because my husband's in the military. And I was like, well, hello, like you should revisit this. And she's like, well, I'm too old. I was like, well, how old are you? And she's like 37. And I was like, what? You're not too old. It's like, what are you talking about? And then she said afterwards, she just needed someone to open up her eyes to this doubting that she had on herself. And that's sometimes that's all you need. And then there's other questions in the game because not everyone has something they did as a child. So there's all these different questions to ask and they're out of the box questions to make you really think like who you are as a person and what you enjoy. Um, So there's the card game, and then I did ask the Okinawans, what do you suggest for someone who's having difficulty with their ikigai? And they did say, just go out and do stuff. And one of the key phrases that they recommended is just say yes. And people are like, well, what if I'm a yes man? And you say yes too much? Like, obviously, you don't say yes too much. But we're seeing the younger generation say no to everything. Have you seen those memes online where it's like, my friends canceled, I'm so happy, and then they're like in their blanket on the sofa watching Netflix? And I've seen so many pictures of like, I'm so happy plans are canceled, or I'm gonna say no, I'm saying yes now, but I'm gonna be saying no later. Like people are saying no too much and wanting to be inside a little too much. And the Okinawans are saying like, go out and just get out of your comfort zone is actually what they'd say. Like, go out and do things that you normally wouldn't do because you might figure out something about yourself that you didn't know before.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a big part of this podcast, getting out of your comfort zone. That's why I always ask that question because I always want to know, like, how did you push yourself and what impact did that have? And every single person I've talked to so far, knock on wood, has said that it's been a positive outcome for them. So, yeah, getting out of your comfort zone, I can't stress enough how important that's been for me in my life, and how important that's been for my guests. And so it seems to be definitely a recurring theme. But I did want to ask, like, just to shift gears a little bit, just a little sidebar here. I always see these clips of that guy, Brian Johnson. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's like a billionaire, like tech guy who's like the most measured man alive. And he like wants to live forever. I wonder what your take is on him. It seems to be that is his ikigai in a way. But I wonder what your take is on him from this Okinawan perspective of longevity. Is he doing stuff that makes sense, or is he just a wacky billionaire?
So I do tours as well in Okinawa, and the people that I only do longevity tours. I don't do anything else. And people that come on my tour like always bring him up because it's like they've watched him for so long, and now they're here in the field of Okinawa and they're gonna see what's going on. And I say, no, like let me show you to my friends, let me introduce you to my friends, and you'll see that they're not taking all these weird supplements. Like Okinawa has supplements, but it's not like extracts of NMN and then now it's creatine and it's all this stuff. Like they don't do any of that. They don't do red light therapy. Okinawa is a hot island, so it doesn't have onsens. It doesn't have saunas. It doesn't have hot baths. Now we have artificial ones, but the elderly people don't use them. Like all this stuff he does, like calculate his food and his nutrition. It's the Okinawans don't do any of that. And I talked to Dr. Suzuki as well. And it just further proves his point that it's it's probably mindset. Like food and exercise, as long as you get the basics down and you're not, eating McDonald's, you're good. But we're not looking into people's mindsets because the Okinawans, there's a phrase in Okinawan language. They have an actual word. It's called nankuro naisa, and it means whatever will happen will happen. And that's just the way they take life every day. Like whatever will happen will happen. Like you don't get the job you want, it's fine. Like the job you're meant to have will happen. Like this is the way they literally think. And if Brian Johnson is putting too much stress and effort into making all these very precise decisions and testing his body every day, you're going to counteract the effects with the stress, with the mindset. But again, we can't put this into a test tube to prove it. But all I can say is the Okinawans are not doing what Brian Johnson is doing. And a lot of them live to 107, 108, 109. So it is it's very curious because Okinawa does not have a magic food. It does not have a magic nutritious food that they've been eating. It does not have a magic exercise type. It is not karate. Okinawa is the birthplace of karate, but the elderly people, a lot of them don't do karate. It is not a magic number of friends. It is not money. Like I
And when
guess
you
you can
say
leave it
people are
still.
living to, 105, 6, 7, it's like they're still functional at that age in the sense that they're mentally there, they're physically still able to do things. And so it's like a more kind of viable lifestyle than like someone who's maybe, 100 or 94, but like is immobile and or is, has dementia or something. So it's like this particular part of the world has a longevity beyond just, being alive, but it's a lifestyle as well. It's like a quality of life that they have that surpasses that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
You always hear about the Japanese perfecting things, and they're, like they really mastered. I forget what the term is, but I love the art that they do when something breaks and they fill it in with like gold, and it's to show that it's broken, but it's still beautiful. And they have bonsai, which I'm also a huge fan of. And I just wonder, like, do you think mastery is a piece of this at all? Like finding a skill and mastering it, I would imagine would bring some ikigai.
The gold fixing thing, I think, is called kintsugi, I think. But that's mainly in Japan. My specialty is Okinawa.
Okay.
But that's one of the difference between the Okinawans and the Japanese, I think. I think the Okinawans did do, yeah, they do mastery as well, but there's more like it's okay if I mess up because I'm enjoying it kind of aspect.
Hmm.
Like the bar owner I mentioned that's 94 years old, I asked her like when you started this bar because you were really passionate, did it go well? And she said, no, I actually used to fight with the customers. And I was like, what? Because she's the sweetest, best listener ever. And she was like, no, I actually was pretty bad at running the bar. I would fight them and yell at them and um, but most of them kept coming back. And then she learned how to control her temper. And then she learned how to be a good listener. And then she learned, it was a learning process. But is her bar like the number one bar in the street? No. And she prefers to keep it that way. She wants it to just be regulars. So I think it's a little more about just enjoying the process than mastering it. And I'm speaking just for Okinawa.
No, fair enough. Yeah, that's an important distinction. Just being able to enjoy it, because it can be frustrating if you're like working on something and you can't quite get it right. But really it's about enjoying the process, even if it's failing.
Low, low stress.
Yeah, for sure.
Low
Well,
stress.
Crystal, thank you so much. It's been really cool learning more about this. It's something that I'm really fascinated by. So I appreciate you coming on. I like to end the podcast by always asking about a time that you stepped outside of your comfort zone. I wonder if you have anything that comes to mind.
I step out of my comfort zone constantly. Since I run my own business and I have since I graduated, it's constantly trying new businesses and figuring out how to promote Okinawan longevity. So that's cold calling people, cold messaging people, posting videos, doing interviews like this, going to different countries to be invited to speak. Not all of them have gone very well. So it's just I'm always putting myself out of my comfort zone, and even when I fail, like I've owned a restaurant here and in a very busy, popular area. I've owned a house cleaning business. I've owned a veggie box delivery service, and they eventually I either quit or let them go. And sometimes I lost a lot of money, but every time I was like, this is a learning experience, and I can't let myself get deep down into the hole because then you're going to fall into depression and then stop trying to grow as a person. So I just picked myself up and said nan kurunaisa and kept moving forward.
Couldn't agree more. Failure is part of the process. It's part of the process. It's certainly been part of the process on this podcast that I've started. I've failed a million ways to Sunday and learned a bunch of different things along the way. And hopefully that is, the way to make it better. And so I'm glad that you've found your thing. And thank you for sharing it with me. If people want to find more out about your business and about Ikigai, where can they find you?
You can find me at trueikigai.com. Trueikigai. That's how you spell ikigai. So trueikigai.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here, Crystal. It was great talking with you.
Yeah, I wish you all the success with your podcast.